Hey guys, and welcome back for today's video where I'm covering 5 polls that have come out over the last week or so, and all of these coming out after the first round of Democratic primary debates. Now, I actually already uploaded this video, but I noticed that I made a mistake when I went over the Quinnipiac University poll, which was the first one that I touched on. So I thought I'd go back and re-record this section. So starting off here, looking at Quinnipiac University and the numbers that they had and how they compare to around a month ago, back June 11th of 2019. Joe Biden led the way. He had 30% support. Bernie Sanders was in second at 19%. Elizabeth Warren at 15%. Pete Buttigieg at 8%, and Kamala Harris at 7 percentage points. Now we compare that to what their current numbers are, and Joe Biden has taken quite a bit of a step back where he's now at 22% support, still in first place, but it's getting much more competitive. Senator Kamala Harris taking a big step up from 7 points all the way up to a 20% support in second place in this one, and she arguably had the most impressive debate performance out of all these top tier candidates, and it really does feel like it's becoming a 4-horse race amongst Biden, Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, as well as Kamala Harris working her way into that upper tier group. And then we see Elizabeth Warren follows at 14% support, which is pretty similar to the numbers that she had in the early portion of June. But Bernie Sanders also taking a step back in this particular Quinnipiac poll, where he's at 13% support, where he was at 19% in the last one. And we take the breakdown by the genders, where Joe Biden leads amongst men at 22%, Sanders at 19%, and then Harris at 14%. But amongst women, Harris has a slight edge, pulling into first place with 24% support to Joe Biden, who's at 22%. And this is the key for Kamala Harris if she's going to try to win the primary, and that's tapping into 2 key demographics of the Democratic primary electorate, that being women voters, which she's showing that she's doing quite well here at 24% support, and also trying to tap in to that African American vote. And if she can continue to build with these constituencies, that should really help her chances at trying to push her way forward and compete in this upper tier along with Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren. And like I said, becoming what feels around a 4-horse race with these top tier candidates. So now I'm going to go over and take a look at the most recent poll that we have from Reuters, and we can see here that Joe Biden is at the top at 22% support amongst all Americans, amongst registered voters. That number is a little bit stronger at 24%. Kamala Harris at 10 percentage points amongst all the people in this particular poll. Elizabeth Warren at a similar number, 9%. Bernie Sanders in second place at 16% support. And then all the other candidates aren't doing quite as well. We can see Beto O'Rourke only at 3%, Cory Booker and Julian Castro at just 1%, Pete Buttigieg only at 3 percentage points. So that's what we're getting from this most recent Reuters poll. Now going over and taking a look at a Change Research poll, which is a little bit of an outlier in comparison to a lot of the other numbers that we've been getting. And we can see that here with Elizabeth Warren leading the way with 22% support, Kamala Harris at 21%, Joe Biden at 18%, and Bernie Sanders at 17%. All of these numbers very close and competitive. And this really is starting to feel like it's becoming a 4-horse race, where it might have just been 3 prior to going into the debates with Biden, Sanders, and Warren. But after her very strong debate performance, Harris has inched her way up and continued to do better with these numbers that we're seeing from the senator from California. Now moving over and taking a look at a Washington Post poll, and this one has Joe Biden in first place at 29% support, Bernie Sanders in second place at 23%, and then Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris both at 11 percentage points respectively. So we can see a bit of difference overall in these numbers going from poll to poll, but it does still feel like in general Joe Biden has the most support. It is in the decline, and that's evident to see especially when we take a look at polls coming from the same outlets, what we were seeing from Joe Biden around a month or so ago in comparison to his numbers now, while Bernie Sanders has been relatively even and similar, while Harris and Warren have become more competitive. And just one more interesting set of numbers that we're getting from a CNN poll that just came out, and they asked, regardless of who you support, which Democratic candidate for president do you think can best handle, and then they asked them about the economy, healthcare, the climate crisis, and race relations. And I think it's just interesting to kind of look at these numbers as a whole. And we see with the economy, Joe Biden doing the best there with 28%, Warren with in second at 20%, Bernie Sanders at 16%, Kamala Harris only at 6% in this particular category. Now, healthcare is where Bernie Sanders takes a step forward, 26% in first place with this one. He's the strongest candidate in terms of supporting Medicare for all. Not a big surprise to see Democratic primary voters think that somebody who's pushing something like a Medicare for all might be their best option. We're seeing that here. Joe Biden at 18%, Elizabeth Warren at 16%, and Kamala Harris at 10%, all of them doing the best again with these numbers. And it is interesting when you think about it. Bernie Sanders strongly pushing Medicare for all. That is also the case with Elizabeth Warren and to some extent Kamala Harris. So if you just add up the 2016, 16, and 10% of those three candidates who are pushing for Medicare for all, that is a pretty strong number overall. Now, there's going to be a lot of debate out there, obviously, that Harris isn't potentially going to push Medicare for all as strongly as candidates like a Sanders or Warren might be able to do, but she's signed on to Bernie Sanders' bill. And then you contrast that to Joe Biden, who of the top four is the only one saying, we're not doing Medicare for all, we're just going to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, and he's sitting there at 18%. And then going over and taking a look at the climate crisis, I'm actually pretty surprised that Joe Biden is tied for first with this one. He hasn't been quite as bold in terms of what he was initially saying about what his policy would be towards the climate crisis. He has come around and come a bit more to the left on this, so that perhaps has helped his numbers a bit. But he's at 19% with this one. Also, Bernie Sanders tied for first place there at 19%, Elizabeth Warren at 14%, as well as Kamala Harris only at 6%. In this one, we go down here, take a look at Jay Inslee, 6% support. He is the strongest, arguably the strongest candidate here in terms of what he wants to do for the climate crisis, and it does feel like he's getting a bit of a boost there with those numbers as a result, where that's his number one issue that he's running on, and people are showing that in these numbers where he didn't register in the other three categories, but he is registering a 6% there under the climate crisis. And then the last category here, we have race relations, and that's where Kamala Harris starts doing quite a bit better. In first place at 29%. You have Joe Biden there at 16%, and Bernie Sanders at 13%, Elizabeth Warren at 6%, and also Cory Booker here, one of his better categories at 9%, where the other three categories he was at 2%, 2%, and 1% respectively. So those are the 5 different polls that I wanted to touch on here in this particular video, showing you that we are starting to get some movement in these numbers after the first round of debates. And after every succeeding debate after this, we're likely to get some movement in these numbers overall. Joe Biden was the clear-cut front runner, head and shoulders above the rest of the field going into those first debates. That isn't the case anymore, where it is becoming a bit more competitive with these other candidates, in particular Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Kamala Harris. So that's going to wrap this one up, guys. Thanks for stopping by. Consider subscribing for more, and I hope to see you guys back here for future videos.